After those very interesting innovations, it is time to move to something exciting. As relationships between nations get rewritten, economic activity around the globe is also witnessing considerable churn. An anti-Chinese sentiment is leading many nations to question their own reliance on the East Asian country. As manufacturers look to move out of China and scout for alternate production hubs, India can position itself as the next best choice. But this will be easier said than done, and being a manufacturing powerhouse will need a complete overhaul of systems and policies for India. Plenty of challenges exist, and nations like Vietnam and Bangladesh can prove to be serious competition. In such a scenario, how can India ramp up its manufacturing ecosystem, and what needs to be done to become a prominent player? To discuss more on this, we have a panel on Can India Replace China as the World's Factory? To talk more on this, we have Rene van Berkel, UNIDO Representative, Regional Office, India. The United Nations Industrial Development Organization, or UNIDO, focuses on sustainable industrial development and inclusive economic growth and has long working relations with MSMEs in the country. Next, we have Rajiv Chawla, Chairman IMSME of India and Jairaj Group of Industries. Mr. Chawla represents an industry chamber of MSMEs in Faridabad and is also the founder of an auto components company. Nitin Kunkoliankar, President MAIT, also joins the panel. MAIT is the apex body representing India's IT hardware sector. Lastly, we have Rajiv Singh, Partner and Leader Automotive, Deloitte India. Mr. Singh has over 22 years of experience across both industry and consulting, and his primary focus has been automotive and manufacturing. Over to you, Pran, to take this forward.
Thank you, Neha. And you're absolutely right in pointing out the importance of manufacturing in India. The topic of manufacturing in India has seen great discussion over the last couple of months as talks of India becoming the alternate to China gather steam. To discuss how India can become a manufacturing powerhouse, we have with us today a distinguished panel, and it's my pleasure to welcome them today. First up, we have Rene van Berkel, UNIDO Representative, Regional Office, India; Rajiv Chawla, Chairman, IMSME of India and Jairaj Group of Industries; Nitin Kunkoliankar, President, MAIT; and Rajiv Singh, Partner and Leader Automotive, Deloitte India. Thank you all for joining us. Great. Ray, let me come to you first. You have the international perspective as well, and you have been closely associated with Indian manufacturing space for some time now. How would you characterize this space?
Thank you very much. And yes, indeed, I've been associated with India and particularly with the manufacturing sector from the perspective of facilitating inclusive and sustainable industrial development. We see the manufacturing sector, I think two words come to mind. One is dynamic and the other one is very diverse. So dynamic is that there has been quite a good ability to respond to different developments and to be entrepreneurial in that sense. And that is also now helping, and we see that also in the current COVID situation, that new businesses are starting to repurpose. They are starting to use the 3D printing machines to produce ventilator parts, or they're starting to manufacture PPEs as an example. So the dynamism is very much there. I think on the other hand, it's also very diverse. So it's very difficult to speak about manufacturing in India as a one entity. We see from of course one feature is of course a highly domination by MSME sector, and then MSMEs often a bit looked upon negatively or frowned upon, which I don't think is always right. It might be in some cases right, but there's this diversity of even in the MSME segment of businesses which are really very old-fashioned technology, old technology, but also very high-end technology startups. And then the MSME segment is so intricately linked to also the major export owners or the major OEMs of in the automotive sector or in the electronics sector, or you go to chemical sector, where a lot of the initial manufacturing of basic chemicals is done by small and medium-sized enterprises. So I think it's dynamic, diverse. It doesn't fit in one box. It's also quite, I would say, entrepreneurial, and so quite the dispersed, a divergent picture, I would say, as a first impression.
Right. Mr. Kulkarni, what is your views on Indian manufacturing?
Say, as on today, we are certainly looking at the China versus rest of the world as an opportunity. India has to cover up for the lost period. Say today China has almost 16 trillion economy, contributing almost 40% of the contribution comes from manufacturing sector in their GDP. In India, out of 2.4 trillion economy, we get hardly 16%. But if you really look at the size in terms of China, we are nothing. We need to do a lot. In fact, India focused more on service in past 2 decades. Probably we failed to understand the importance of making manufacturing grow in this country. We thought India could lead the world in an easy way through service development. Manufacturing has a very high multiplier. A higher share of manufacturing will also add to the growth of service sector. I think we didn't catch up on this agenda. Maybe somewhere in 90 or by 2000, year 2000, we didn't catch up with this agenda. And that is where we did mistakes. And that's exactly the time where China started becoming a manufacturing superpower. So we need to do some quick exercise. And many times I talked about the federal structure that exists in the country. Alone creating policies at central level doesn't work. Even in central government, if you see, each administrative ministry drives manufacturing in their own ways. You look at renewable power sector, they look at the different aspects of manufacturing. You look at automotive sector, it has a very different segment of electronics, but again the outlook is different. Electronics and IT is being dealt by Ministry of Electronics. Railways have a different approach towards making manufacturing happen for their products. But there is no integrated approach that is happening, manufacturing as a whole, electronics as a whole. Even if you are talking about power segment, and today in solar and other aspects, there's a lot of electronics happening. We need to understand the convergence of technology, and probably we need to start considering the demand. Today, if you work on demand aggregation alone, looking at Indian market is not enough. We need to also look at the global markets. You need to be export oriented. You will be competitive in India only when you are able to be competitive in export markets. That's where our focus from import substitution has to go towards participating in the global value chains. So I think we need to correct our legacy, take states on board, take the same central government agencies on board together on a common agenda of manufacturing. At times, DPIIT or Department of Promotion for Industrial Growth, they talk about one structure of manufacturing, then they say if it is electronic manufacturing, you go to IT department. I mean, everyone tries to compartmentalize. And I think that's not the right issue and not right way where manufacturing can grow. So we need an entire government of India should have one manufacturing mission. And all the states should come together on board. That would drive a change in manufacturing sector in this country. Otherwise, the states have their own policies, their own vision, their own compulsions. There is no ease of doing business in the states. In most of the states, there are issues. There is a difficulty in getting good land, quick power, water, roads, connectivity. Our ports are having severe issues. They are not equipped to handle India to be a manufacturing superpower. Let's be very frank. If you want to grow through an exports mode, India is just not geared up. You look at the quality of ports, it's one of the best. Even if we want to connect our neighborhood countries through a good railway service, we are very weak. We haven't bothered about it for so long. So India has to look at the holistic, we have to have a holistic approach and look at a complete value chain of manufacturing, take state, center on board together, and industry would certainly grow. That's what I would like to say.
Vishal, let me come to you now. What is your view of manufacturing in India? And auto is a bright spot. What is it that you guys have done right till now?
Okay, manufacturing in India, especially for the MSMEs, is the future. When I say it is the future, I think it is the future of India's economy. And a lot of after agriculture, manufacturing is the sector that is really going to provide employment to to people in India. And manufacturing MSMEs in India have been contributing a very large share in terms of the total output that is from the manufacturing sector. About 45% of that comes from the MSME sector, and a very large part of exports are also from the MSME sector. So directly and indirectly, even today, the manufacturing MSMEs have been providing. They are, after agriculture, they are the second largest employment provider. So any boost to this sector or any development in this sector would impact very positively the entire economy of the nation. Manufacturing is very, very critical, and it's not just about make in India movement, but it's about self-reliant India. And if we are talking about making a self-reliant India, and an India that is globally seen, where we say local is now global, then manufacturing in the Indian sector, as MSME sector, has to become the government's first agenda for times to come. And as you mentioned about the auto sector, how this wonderful transition came. And I have no hesitation in saying that we learned big time with one small company entering into India, and that is Suzuki. And it came as Maruti Suzuki, a joint venture. And that one company created the entire work culture. Till then, India, and I remember I had just entered the manufacturing sector those days, and the new quality norms, the new quality systems, right from the packaging to delivery, the QCT, the quality cost delivery norms, etc. All this came so much as surprise. Today, that with Suzuki has virtually come in a work culture. All the terminologies that manufacturing sector today uses, the 5F, the Kaizen, the Toyota line of the systems of manufacturing, everything comes from Japan with that one company. So I think it's not about just the one sector, it's about the entire manufacturing culture. And Suzuki brought that to India, and we owe it to that.
Mr. Singh, you are associated with the auto sector. Auto sector is largely considered to be one of the strong points of Indian manufacturing. Is that assumption true, or do you think we have deficiencies in that sector as well?
So I'm just going to add to a few points that we heard. See, automotive, you're right. If you look at various sectors in the country, automotive is one of those sectors where manufacturing has really done better off. Maybe apart from automotive, you look at some of the other sectors like textile, we have done slightly better off. We may have done slightly better off when it came to maybe consumer durables and the FMCG sector. But some of the sectors where we really missed out big time, I would say, is electronics as a sector, where we really could not establish a very large value chain within the country. Another thing would be to do with high-tech companies. We could not really attract big investments when it came to high-tech. And very importantly, the backbone of most of the manufacturing comes from capital goods. So that's another sector that I think we missed out. So just like Rene said, I think that as a country, we see a pretty diverse set of manufacturing value chains in the country. Some sectors have done better off. Some sectors have not done all that well. But one of the things that I would like to highlight is we had created a vision to say that let manufacturing grow and contribute to say 25% of our GDP. About 5 years back, we said that. Manufacturing was at 16, 17 percentage points of GDP, say about 5 years back. And we still hover around the same number. It may have just gone up by maybe 0.5 or 1%, but not a significant increase in that. And that's where I just wanted to bring about a point that let's learn and realize that when some of the countries have become very big in manufacturing, there is something that they have done very differently. For example, if I say manufacturing and China, the one word that comes to the mind of everyone is economies of scale. So if you say manufacturing in China, the one word that people think of is economies of scale. If you think of manufacturing in Japan, because Japan is also very, very strong in manufacturing, the one word that people think of when they think of manufacturing and Japan is quality, because they think, okay, if you do manufacturing in Japan, you'll get high quality products. Let's look at another example. Think of manufacturing in Germany, for example. So the moment you say manufacturing in Germany, the one word that people will come back and say is engineering, because that's what manufacturing in Japan is known for. In Germany is known for. But when you say manufacturing in India, okay, there is no such kind of, there is nothing that really represents. And I've heard all kinds of answers. Rene may not be able to relate to this, is Jugaad. Yes. Okay, now that is what I think we need to think about when you think of manufacturing in India. What is it that we can build a DNA around? And when people say that, okay, let me try and replicate a China model into India, I think that let's rethink, is that the right strategy? Do we want to just be a Me Too in the globe and say that let me also build some factories which are representing economies of scale in India? And is that really possible? Because do we have the right ecosystem? Nitin, of course, spoke about a lot in terms of the ecosystem, in terms of ease of doing business, infrastructure, ports and other things and so on and so forth. So do we want to be really a Me Too to China to say that, okay, what China did, they are known for economies of scale, that's what we will do in India? Or do we want to have our own DNA on manufacturing in India, just like Japan, China, Germany, US and other countries have? Can we have our own DNA? And that's what I thought could be a point to think about, maybe frugal manufacturing. Let's not think of large volumes to be produced from India, but let's think of how do we do manufacturing which is highly personalized, which means that we don't produce large volumes. We produce comparatively lower volumes, but we do highly personalized products or customized products, which means batch sizes are smaller, and still we remain frugal. So I think that that's an important thing that we need to collectively find an answer as to what is the DNA of the Indian manufacturing that we would like to represent. Otherwise, the fear I have is that we are all going in different directions, trying to replicate the models which are already existing in manufacturing in different parts of the globe.
Rene, let me come to you. Let me take this further. What Mr. Singh said right now. Is Jugaad going to be the right approach to manufacturing, or at the most we can, look at it as something which is a little temporary? And then, what should we produce? I mean, if China is the factory of the world, should we just go on producing everything, or should we compartmentalize and say, this is what we'll produce, this is what we'll not produce, this is what we'll be good at? What are your views?
Yes, quite a number of questions. I think I would like to reflect on Nitin's comments that I think much more can be done in India with manufacturing, and there is much more potential with a strong focus on manufacturing. And that brings me back to the answer to your question, Brown, that what we see as a bit missing in India is this sort of manufacturing competencies. So a fact that many businesses have started manufacturing from a trading background, they have not established strong manufacturing skills or manufacturing systems. They might be good at welding or painting or something else, but they cannot immediately see a manufacturing system, and that is then reflected in the Jugaad kind of reference or so. But we cannot do digitization of the Jugaad manufacturing. Then we get bogged down completely. So we need to invest, and that's also UNIDO's work is very much on that, to build up manufacturing competencies and put a value on that. And the irony is actually that some of the advanced manufacturing technologies like Industry 4.0 are part enabled by the IT services which India is providing. So India is providing this, helping to develop this, but it's going to go into the US or Japan or Germany for that argument's sake. So I think really a focus on manufacturing can help to grow. I think there are some cross-cutting issues which we have to invest in. That is the manufacturing competencies, the linkages with research and manufacturing and innovation related to that, linkages on supply chain development. But on the other hand, there is also need to really prioritize, because we cannot copy and paste what China has done. There is not the international market that we can there's not a second volume of potential demand that we can tap into in the world, and there is also not a willingness to do that. And we have a huge domestic market that is also underserviced. So it would be much better to try to focus on a few areas where India could be identified to have call it the sweet spot for participation in global value chains, and then we can establish on that. We have we've mentioned the automotive, so automotive components could be one, electronics, textiles traditionally, chemicals. Think about food processing. There's so much potential there. So rather than trying to do everything and sort of it's not the time in the world situation is against us, and it's also not immediately utilizing the potential that India has in different sectors.
Mr. Kulkarni, my next question is to you. And at one point of time, we had operators like HCL, Zenith, who was making computers, who were in the space of electronic hardware. What happened then? And you did briefly talk about the steps we made probably during the 1990s. What happened then, and why haven't we been able to rectify it now?
So I must tell you the facts. At one time, probably from 1985 onwards till 1998 or till 2000, you could see the emergence of Indian brand owners, from HCL to Wipro. Wipro also was one of the dominant players. Then you had Zenith Computers emerging as one of the top players, HCL. Even HP partnered with HCL, and that time was different. But everyone, the entire industry was looking at the duty differentials. This industry emerged in an era of 200% duty on the finished product. The populated boards were coming at 200% and unpopulated would come at 50%. But entire industry was looking at the duty arbitrage, and a very substantial duty arbitrage of around 50% to 80%. So that led to growth of assembly. So you would get either in SKD or CKD and just manufacture. But no one actually made attempts to create a value chain. You just get hard disk, motherboard, and some products, just assemble them and save on duty. And that's how that sector would emerge. 2000 onwards, China started growing. Taiwan started becoming an expensive destination. So at that time, India and China had equal opportunities, especially in PC manufacturing. So China started offering substantial incentives. India started disincentivizing. Like, for example, they started creating special additional duty, which was actually very deterrent to the imports. I mean, it was inverted, complete inverted duty regime. Then somewhere around 2005, India signed ITA 1. wherein 217 products got covered. Obviously, in a zero duty regime, we were not prepared. When we were looking at a huge duty difference, all of a sudden we started moving to a zero duty regime. At the same time, there was inverted duty. China started offering heavy investment linked incentives. So obviously, the investment moved towards China. They started supplying you the products at a very cheap rate. So even the multinational brands started taking a very strong position in the country. With ITA, we gave market access to many more players. A lot of companies which you can see today are dominating the market have come during that time. And that's where our policy failed. So manufacturing was a punishment. You had to pay at least 2 to 3% extra over and above your finished product if you have to manufacture here. I think on policy front, we messed up as far as government is concerned. But as far as industry is concerned, none of the industry players started creating a value chain. And we paid a price of it. Everyone was comfortable earning money out of this duty difference. I think it was a lesson. So it's a joint failure of industry as well as the government.
Right. Mr. Chala, I'll come to you. I think Mr. Kulkarni puts it very well. But I don't know if you still feel the same way. Is manufacturing still a punishment? I'm sure despite all that auto sector as achieved, it must not be all hunky-dory.
Well, manufacturing is, of course, if I may say, the toughest of all the opportunities that entrepreneurship world offers. Of course, the grass is always greener on the other side. But then, from my own experience as an entrepreneur, and of course, as representative of many in different trades, I do realize that manufacturing is the toughest of the game. And don't call it punishment, but then yes, it is something that takes the toll out of an entrepreneur's life. He has to deal with every aspect that a business calls for, and everything else that the world handles, plus the labor and the supplies and the logistics and many other issues, including some special laws that govern only the manufacturing. So, in terms of compliances, also his compliances are the maximum. In terms of energy and other related issues, naturally, the disruptions also come to such an entrepreneur very, very easily. Any lockdown issue and any such things affect manufacturing the most, because it is something that cannot be done online, while many services can be. So manufacturing is of course the toughest, and perhaps that is why the results are the best.
Right. Mr. Singh, if I can come to you, Mr. Chawla also, talked about it. There are certain regulations and laws which are probably only applicable to manufacturing units. How much of our policies and laws are in tune to actually help manufacturing in India, or are they, in some way just further shackles?
No, of course, I would say that from where we were a few years back or a couple of decades back to where we are now, a lot of things have changed for the good. But we still have a lot of distance to cover if we have to really compete on the global scale when it comes to manufacturing. Now, one of the things, for example, people kept talking about how complex tax structure that we have in the country. Okay, and this was something that was discussed, debated for about 15 years, 20 years, and so on and so forth, till we had at least some kind of rationalization of the number of indirect taxes that we had in the country, which used to run more than 20 at one point in time. And you talk about any manufacturer or any other player who wanted to get into India, they were really afraid of this tax regime. They said that we need to hire a lot of people who will tell us what the tax we need to pay, because we have no clue about so many slabs of, so many structures of indirect taxes and so on and so forth, and the statutory requirements around it and so on and so forth. I would not say that, yes, we have completely kind of taken care of it, but I would say that, yes, we have done quite a bit in terms of when it comes to resolving some of the long-standing expectations that the manufacturing sector had. but still there is a long distance to go there. Now let's look at a lot of other issues that the manufacturing companies have. They still have a lot of issues when it comes to land, for example. Anyone who has to set up a new factory, anyone who has to go and kind of get an approval, the kind of steps that they have to go through, and the multiple agencies that they deal with. First, of course, you deal with the central government when you're getting into any, say you're coming from outside. Then you deal with the state government. Then you deal with the municipal corporations and so on and so forth, depending on wherever you're trying to look for land. So there are a lot of issues which are related to land. There are a lot of issues which are related to labor, for example. A country where even if you, I don't know exact number, but maybe it's just about 10. If you just have 10 people, then suddenly you have so many other laws which become applicable to you. A union can be formed and so on and so forth. So we have, I think, a lot of things on the plate which need to be resolved when we are talking about really building that competitive edge when it comes to manufacturing. But hats off, I would say, to entrepreneurs that we have a few of them, a couple of them here have been on a call. I think despite all the hurdles that we see, we still have a manufacturing sector which came up over the last few decades. At least in certain sectors, as we spoke, a sector like automotive, I think we really built the entire value chain. And today, it takes a lot of pride in saying that the total output of auto component manufacturers which are there, the tier 1s and tier 2s and so on, is actually larger than the total output value of the OEMs put together, which speaks volumes in terms of what we have been able to achieve in this particular sector. The idea is that can we replicate this across other sectors as well? And yes, we can wait for all the policies, we can wait for all the laws to change, but I think it's a hand-in-hand thing that has to go and happen. A lot depends also in terms of all the kind of taxes that we have on imports and the benefits that people may have on exports. If you're really looking at kind of ensuring that there is a certain sector which really grows, or there is a certain set of manufacturing companies which really come up in the country, because sometimes people may find that it's easier just to probably bring all the parts and assemble in the country. So if you're really looking at, say, for example, in automotive, you're looking at EV, then we need to really rethink that how are we taxing all the components which go inside an EV vehicle. That is one which is going to either aid in terms of setting up a large value chain around just like for the ICE engine, we got the entire value chain up in the country. Can we get the entire value chain even for the EV? Or alternatively, we may just become an assembly house, which means that we'll get all the parts from outside, all the value then goes to other countries, and we just assemble the vehicle in India. And assembly is not going to really create jobs, or not really going to create too much of value. So a lot depends on how all these policies, taxes, and other things are seen in totality, I would say.
Right. Vivek, if I can come to you, one of the ways to incentivize has always been around taxation, monetary incentives. UNIDO has done a lot of work with micro entrepreneurs, with small and medium enterprises. What are the kind of experiences that you have seen from manufacturing hubs around India? What kind of incentives work better?
Yes, I think this is a very interesting question and a very diverse answer because I think that one of the features of the MSME segment is, of course, also a large degree of informality, and the informality which comes into to 80 or some say even 85% of the finance and the capital is informal. So all the tax and monetary incentives are not really working for those enterprises. So there's a large segment of the smaller manufacturing which is by definition excluded, and we need to probably address this because there would be many benefits. We need to convince that there are benefits that are coming into the formality. They can be seen, they can be supported and benefited from that. I think the other part on what is often said, then we need to incentivize and get large companies to come to India, set up manufacturing hubs, and then do that. I think UNIDO has done quite a lot of work on analyzing global value chain companies in Southeast Asia and China, East Asia, and elsewhere. And it is easy to do a financial incentive or a fiscal incentive to give a tax holiday or other measures, but they are not really very effective in the longer run. And also the major investors are taking that you can go, it's the race to the bottom, who offers most. But ultimately, what makes the success of a business, of a global value chain company, is much more than just the fiscal incentives. It's whether there is a potential. I come back to what Nitin was referring to. We set up a value chain locally, so we can get parts. Can we get connected? What is the security of contracts to be enforced, and other things? What is the manufacturing competences? What is the skills that are out there? So there tends to be a focus on the quick fix, which could be money, but on the other hand, it's very limited. If I come at our own work, there's a lot of talk on the automotive sector already, and UNIDO has worked with ACMA, the Automotive Components Manufacturers Association, for quite a long time on programs on productivity, lean manufacturing, and innovation. And you might say this is the terms which we know from the 1990s. But still, if we now go out to manufacturing firms which are tier 2 or maybe tier 3, and we run a lean manufacturing program, on average they get about 8 to 15 lakhs savings annually. And you might say that's not something which is at on the horizon of the Prime Minister of India, but for a small business, that is real money in the wallet, so to speak. So really programs that focus on productivity, quality, innovation to improve the effectiveness are still very much appreciated. And I think that also other programs on the related issues, and that maybe links to the whole question on sustainability a little bit, on how do we deal with energy efficiency, renewables. There are many savings opportunities for MSMEs that could be done. But in the overall scheme, like we did in Kurja in Gujarat on the ceramic sector, to bring enterprises together on better technologies, saving money by being smarter. I think that if we really want to grow the micro and small industry segments, that is the way to go to help them to improve the manufacturing systems. If it is about bringing in the large manufacturing or global value chain companies, so bring them to reshore them to India, then we need to look more at the manufacturing and innovation systems and how can we set up, and if we do then a financial or fiscal incentive, can we tie this to saying that, okay, now let's make sure that 40% of your parts are coming within 3 years from India? And what is the government then going to do to help to set up these value chains? So these are very material to business investors.
Right. Then if I can stay on the question and come to you, do you think monetary fiscal incentives will help, get electronic manufacturing up in India? And if not, what do you think can be some of the low-hanging fruits that we can tackle?
Yeah. So, in fact, first of all, the policy of protection has to be replaced with the policy of promotion. We need to actually map the proper requirement and support system that is required for the industry. At times, I have seen many states, they have come with their own policies, but there is no clarity on those policies, what is that government wants to offer. Every state has some industrial policy which I have studied, but it's vague. There is no fulfillment of that commitment. I mean, as an entrepreneur, I can't really rely upon that government would really disburse that money to me. I think 90% of the cases, you don't get whatever the incentive offered by government in time. Look at scenario like you want to set up a plant, you need land. There is maximum corruption is in land, and you getting power connection. Most of the states have issues about power connection. Now, when you talk of investment promotion boards, most of the states now talk about single window system.
Yeah.
But the biggest disaster in the country is this single window system, which has become additional window. I mean, once that window clears it, you again have to go to all other window. I mean, it's big. I mean, it's a joke. So there is no sincerity. First of all, bureaucrats should learn to become facilitators and not control every aspect of business. I would say they are largely responsible for this mess in this country. They are responsible. Let me reiterate. The kind of system that exists, no one is seriously interested in listening to industry and their problems. Everyone tries to come out with some vague policy, announce some crores and crores of incentive on paper. Then the politician will come and give a slogan saying that 10,000 crores, 20,000 crores. And finally, not a single entrepreneur gets even 20% out of it. So if you feel incentives are given, it should reach out to the industry. So the biggest incentive for the industry as of today could be A, you facilitate in terms of infrastructure, operational infrastructure and logistic infrastructure, supply chain infrastructure. That is the key today. Second aspect is in terms of ease of doing business. The ease of doing business in India is a disaster. I do not know on what basis we improve our rank. I don't think just by creating some index and giving some marks, you can't achieve ease of doing business. We have to abolish Inspector Raj. Yes, central government has tried to come out with a lot of things. I compliment central government. Lot of initiatives in company law, lot of initiatives in customs. Certainly, Ministry of Commerce, they need to be appreciated for what they have done. They have liberalized to some extent. But 70% of the job is in the states. Hardly any state or an official wants to give up power. Government should now learn to facilitate, withdraw from controlling. That won't take us forward. China might be communist, but today their outlook is totally like a capitalistic country. They are expansionists today. They mean business. Today, if someone wants to shut down an industry, they would come to your doorstep and ask 100 questions and try to prohibit you from closing, request you, try to help you how to sustain. That's not a case in India. No one bothers. Even if you ask any state government about the statistics in terms of how many units are shut down in last 5 years, I can guarantee you no state has accurate report.
Right. Mr. Chana, what is it that you are seeing on ground? Is it ease of doing business, particularly at the state level, which proved to be a stumbling block for manufacturing units?
Ease of doing business, I remember 6 years back was the prime focus of the government. And they claim that it's still, and in terms from 142nd rank in 2014, it is now somewhere in 60s. Yet at the grassroots, some things haven't changed or haven't changed to our expectations. I agree that government has tried, and they have tried in the last 6 years. One important thing has happened, and that is the technology. So integration of technology with the government systems, that has happened. In fact, once upon a time, private sector would always be ahead of the government. In the last few years, I find that the government has galloped much faster and much ahead of the entrepreneur's world. For example, the GST and its introduction, bringing everyone to the platform. Today, every return from ESI to Provident Fund to TDS, TCS, taxation, virtually everything is online. And so by and large, government has utilized technology, and therefore, maybe a lot of that reflects into their claim of ease of doing business. Now, you can call it an organic course of evolution, that ultimately the whole world is moving towards online things. And yet, I would like to give the due credit to the government that they also utilized the technology and they brought it to the fore. Some of the government laws are very progressive. For example, in Haryana, there is an industrial act now which says that if an entrepreneur applies something online and if the department does not respond to it, so within 45 days, it will be deemed approved. So it's a major law. Now, all that a grassroots level person has to do is just put up an objection on 44th day. So now it is lawfully invalid. So that is why I say that at the top level, there is a serious attempt on bringing in systemic changes. And in fact, many of these changes have been incorporated in the law. And yet, in the system, there are old people, there are young people, and for different reasons, they may still put objections and ultimately force the entrepreneur to still visit those offices and still go back to the previous era. So I'm not one of those who speak always for the government. It is not so. But I understand that some attempts at some, stages and platforms have been made and there have been results. And yet, there are some very serious issues which still plague as badly as ever before, perhaps even worse in some of the cases. For example, now we have a wonderful law. We have IBC code, insolvency and bankruptcy code. No, it's a very strong law, and an enterprise going bankrupt or towards bankruptcy, creditors can trigger a claim, go to the NCLT, NCLT would liquidate, and so there is a process. And yet, to give you one small example, someone who would purchase, let us say, a land or building from NCLT through an auction and try to restart that business, the departments would still come saying that the earlier entrepreneur had to pay X amount of electricity due. The earlier entrepreneur did not know you pay. And unless you pay, we'll not give you power connection. Now, everybody understands that the law, the IBC clearly says that sell the assets to new owners and what is the collection realization from those assets, distribute those into the old builders. But at the grassroots, the new investor is still plagued with the same mindset. So there is a challenge. Another huge challenge, and because I come from the MSME sector, is the infrastructure for the manufacturing sector. Let's admit, it takes years to create infrastructure. The land acquisition itself is not that easy now in India. And with the new land acquisition laws and amendments that have been made. So it's not easy for the government now to acquire land and then do it. And for example, I come from Faridabad, and if you look at the Delhi NCR, there are almost 100,000 MSMEs which are in the non-conforming areas. Non-conforming means that someone just bought a small piece of land in a village, set up an industry. Now, it may not have legal recognition because let us say the building plan would not be approved. So therefore, that industry would never get a factory license. Therefore, that industry would never get NOC from Pollution Control Department. Therefore, that industry may never get a bank loan. Therefore, that industry will never get a government incentive. Therefore, that industry would exist forever, pay all government liabilities, but would never be legally accepted. And therefore, such an industry can be threatened any time by any inspector threatening that I'll close you. And there are 100,000 such industries only in and around Delhi. If you look at the entire nation, it would be millions. And year after year, we are trying to reach out to the government and saying that let's legitimize these industries which are there, because you will take a million years to create infrastructure for these. And by the time you do, there would be as many new entrepreneurs who would have ventured out. So sometimes one has to respect the past. And, for example, residential areas also, sometimes they come up, in unapproved areas. But then finally, in the election days, government would approve some of those slum busties and regularize. So why don't you change the master plan? See, so it's a very slow process. In Haryana, we were able to convince the government. And in 2016, the government of Haryana came out with a notification that yes, they'll do a survey. And wherever there are 70% plus industries, they would convert those industrial areas to industrial areas and regularize those. 2016, we are in 2020, the process of survey is still on.
Right, Mr. Singh, if I can come to you, there's often a toss-up. I think we've had, both our speakers really enlighten us about, the grassroots problem, while we, understand the macro part of it. But on the grassroots level and on the ground, things are a little different. But taking the discussion away from that to, again, something macro in nature, if you look at this year's economic survey, it interestingly talks about maybe trying assemble in India, while we've till now talked about make in India. Economic survey introduces a concept of assemble in India. Do you think that is the right way? And to me, it seems like moving from SKD to CKD. But what's your view?
No, completely agree. I think, if we are talking really of manufacturing, we need to be doing core manufacturing. Assembly is just an eyewash to say some product with written made in India, because that's what would go into the market saying made in India. But the entire value chain of that, which is really the core, which is where really the manufacturing happens, which is where really the value gets created, which is where really the jobs get created. Unless and until we focus on that particular value chain and ensure that we are focusing on the entire manufacturing ecosystem around it, I don't think so that we can really say that we are making anything in India. So and also whatever we make in India by just an assembly line perspective, it not only will add very little value in India, but just think from a perspective, it doesn't serve the purpose of employment, because you can't generate too much of employment if you're only doing assembly. What will happen is that you will open your domestic market, which is the one of the Ds that the government keeps talking about, the demand and the demographics, which is really favoring from a future perspective. And you are saying that, okay, let me allow all the parts which are being manufactured somewhere else in the globe just assembled in India, so that I can meet the requirements of the demand and I can meet the requirements of the demographic move that is happening. But really speaking, if we have to increase the share of GDP from a manufacturing perspective, manufacturing share in the GDP, we need to focus really on then the core industries. Say, for example, when it comes to textiles, and I say that I will just do garments, I don't think so by just manufacturing garments in India, you're really going to excel in that space. Same is the case in automotive. Just by doing assembly of vehicles, you don't do. The real value gets created in the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 levels, because that is where you're really doing hardcore manufacturing. The other element that I thought adding to the question that you asked we should focus on is, when we do manufacturing, we should also look at what kind of products are we manufacturing. The important element is, are we manufacturing something which is really high in terms of value, or is it a pure conversion play? Because if it's a pure conversion play, say for example, I'm just doing some very low end products, it could be a small casting or a forged component or a fabricated part, I always keep getting hassled on price, because my value always is measured as what is the value added in per kg or per ton. And that does not really give me margins. That does not really create value for me. But if I am creating some product which is really high end from a design perspective, then no one comes and talks to me in terms of per kg, because then they start looking at that product and then say that, okay, what is the value that I need to give you for that product, irrespective of the material content in that particular product. In short, when I'm doing manufacturing, will I do manufacturing of those parts where material is as high as 80-85% of the entire cost, or will I do manufacturing also of those parts where material may be just about 15-20% or 30%, and the rest is all the value addition that I have done because of the innovative design that I have done. Now, we have seen quite a few players in India who have been able to transition this journey and who have got into really high-tech products which they are producing, where they are no longer fixing the price on a per kg basis, but they are fixing the price on the value that they bring to the table. And so moving far ahead from assembly that you spoke, I'm saying that it's not just that we should not be an assembler, we should be doing manufacturing, but we should also do manufacturing of those parts which really add value in terms of the unit price and so on and so forth. Now, what it calls for is huge R&D skills and R&D capability, because unless and until we do a lot of research and design in the country, we will not be able to reach there. Now, let's look at an example. Say we heard a large number of countries as examples on this particular panel. Let me bring another country, say South Korea. We didn't speak about South Korea.
Right.
If you look at South Korea 20 years back and look at South Korea now, 5 or 4 big giants they created. They of course created a Hyundai, but they also created a LG. They also created a Samsung. So they created a few big giants, which are global brands, and they compete with all the big players globally all over. But one thing that South Korea is known for in whatever they have done is metallurgy. They picked up one field, and I mean that's not the only field they may have picked up, but I'm just taking it as an example. They picked up one field and said that the R&D that they have done on metallurgy side or the material side is really very unique. And you look at anything that they do, the kind of material that they use, okay, is very different from the traditional material that was being used by others in that same space or in the same market, whether it is in the consumer durable space, it is in the mobile phone space, it is in the automotive space. The kind of steel that they're producing, for example, POSCO or Hyundai Steel, the kind of steel quality that they produce, fairly significantly different in terms of what was happening globally. Now, that is what is important, that we can't think of hence manufacturing as pure assembly, nor we can think of manufacturing as just manufacturing parts, but we have to think of manufacturing something which is high-tech, which will require a lot of ecosystem to be built in terms of the entire R&D around it, hence the ecosystem which supports that kind of innovative thinking, disruptive thinking from a manufacturing perspective, if we have to really become more competitive on this index.
Right. Thank you. Rene, we're running out of time. So my last question to you would be, from what you've heard today and from what we have already picked up from your stay in India, if you have to make 3 suggestions to, really make India a manufacturing powerhouse, what would that be?
Yes, that's fine. I think I will make it as a priority areas, whether it's a specific suggestion or not, that's to be seen. But I think that we need to value manufacturing excellence and really place something on that we are investing, that manufacturing is not a last resort. It's something that is worthwhile doing, that is appreciated, that you can have a career that is attractive. So this and then we drive the manufacturing sector forward. I think that another area that I would really emphasize, and some of the speakers have also highlighted this in a different way, but I would say the kind of innovation ecosystem around the manufacturing needs to be fixed up, and that is in part it's the primary research which Korea did in metallurgy, but in part it's also product design that we invest in, that not just copy what is elsewhere, but really put some great minds into that, and then we can create value chains in different areas and different products. So the innovation ecosystem and support system is another one. Also get the cooperation happening between the IITs, the other training institutes, the technical institutes, and the manufacturing sector. So we drive this as a vibrant innovation community, because that's what's happening in Japan, Korea, and Germany, other areas. And then the third point would be really to try to find to focus on a few sweet spots, as I was referring to earlier on. So where does India have a natural advantage that we could exploit to utilize? And that could be in some established manufacturing sectors, so where automotive is for automotive parts is there. But we could also maybe look at some of the traditional sectors. So we don't always have to look at the engineered products, but what do we have? Let's just take bamboo. We have so much. What can we do with this material? What can we drive an industry around this, or some other products which are around in the country? And that will help us also to connect manufacturing to some of the areas which have now been left out. Take the northeast of the hill states to bring some manufacturing that is sustainable and suitable there. So as 3 directions, I would say sweet spot, innovation, system fix up, and then recognition for manufacturing and driving manufacturing excellence.
Right. Nitin, if I can come to you, what are 3 things or 4 things that you as an electronic manufacturer would really like to see?
I'll say 3 top things. One is integration. Our federal structure is the biggest problem. So we need to integrate our thought process towards economy and manufacturing. Second, ease of doing business. There has to be complete working on ease of doing business. And third is infrastructure linked to economy. Today we are creating random infrastructure. Many states are creating random infrastructure. It should be focused and strategic infrastructure, which needs to be put in place. And lastly, I must say, all these things, yes, will make wonders for the country, build confidence globally, and will also drive investments, bring in new culture of manufacturing. Yes, we need to work on building complete ecosystem. That is also part of the integration.
Not just mobiles.
No, don't just mobile. You need to get into value chain, and we need to build. See, there are hassles. We need to overcome the hassles. Then everyone would invest in the country. Secondly, one of the reasons why IT software industry succeeded from 90 to 2010, they've done very well for the world, is because no politician or bureaucrat knew where to intervene. It was all electronic. So probably we need to take a lesson from that and keep them away. Then the industry will grow.
Right. Great. Thank you, Mr. Chawla. In the automotive space, what is it that you would like to see?
Okay, a few things. One, I agree that we need to bring down the regulations that regulate the manufacturing sector, because most of these regulations, rather than facilitating, are actually the speed breakers, and they slow down the growth. And I am not that I am against regulations. Regulations that focus and that actually facilitate health and safety of industrial workers, protect their social security. That is great. Every entrepreneur is with that. And it's not about asking for a hire and fire policy and all. No one asks for those things. Those are very, very harsh words, just trying to, but I think when I talk about bringing down regulations, then I talk about bringing down regulations that govern the building bylaws or a factory license procedure, or to process for pollution, the change of land use, CLU, etc. So some of those regulations must be so simple that it should be, just like very, very easy. So the easier the authorities can make it, the industries will become more and more compliant. Otherwise, I have seen industries running for 20, 30 years, but still in the illegal segment or without a license segment. If I tell you, and you won't believe, but then it's true, that there are more than 10 circulars every day that directly impact manufacturing entrepreneurs. There are so many departments, so many ministries at the state level, central level, from pollution, environment to manufacturing to commerce to GST, etc., that there are more than 10 circulars that directly impact an entrepreneur. And this, what it leads to? It leads to that 80% of my time, which I should actually put in my core area, this 80-20 ratio has reversed. I give only 20% of my time and energy to my core area and 80% to the north. Second important thing that I would like to say is that let us understand, manufacturing sector is something which is tangible. I'm not denigrating, or I'm not looking at any other sector different way, but then at least this is one sector where all assets can be seen tangibly: the number of machines, the installations, the stock, the finished good, etc., which is not possible in many other service sector areas or the IT sector, etc. And yet, the credit flow to this sector is hugely challenged. There are some sectors where credit flow is challenged because there is nothing tangible and banks don't know how to fund. But here, everything is tangible, and yet the credit flow is not very easy. And I'll give you a very interesting, thing about this pandemic situation. The government announced a 20% emergency line of credit guaranteed by the National Credit Guarantee Fund. and on all loan outstanding as on 29th of February, provided turnover of that unit is not more than 100 crore. Now the definition of MSME is up to 250 crore. But if your turnover is more than 100 crore, then you will not get this 20% line of credit. You go and fend for yourself. So this is one. Pandemic is for everyone. Lockdown situation is for everyone. Every industry has a cash flow issue right now. Every industry has a supply chain. Every industry needs to take care of their thing. And yet, so government could have said that maximum limit up to 5 crore loan or 5 whatever. There could have been a cap. But saying that if you are above 100 crore, not entitled to 20% emergency line of credit. Second is that if your loans are more than 25 crore as on 29th of February, you are not entitled to emergency line of credit. Come on, someone with 26 crore loan or 30 crore loan also needs emergency fund. No. So these are some of the things that, takes these entrepreneurs back.
Right. Mr. Singh, I will let you have the last word. What would you want to see if we have to get serious about manufacturing?
Okay, so a lot has been spoken already by my three other colleagues. So I'm just going to add into my wish list of 3 more things into that. Okay, first and foremost, I think I would like to see the convergence of the entrepreneurial skill that we have in manufacturing sector in India with the technology brains that we have in the country. And what I mean by that is that if we can ensure that we leverage the learnings from technology solutions around Industry 4.0, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and try and bring that all into manufacturing, because that will position us very, very differently. We already know that, yes, we have deep and very strong knowledge on the technology side. And I, for a fact, also know that a lot of these brains are actually currently working in terms of improving manufacturing competitiveness in countries like Japan, in countries like Germany, in countries like US, and so on and so forth. But why not we ensure that manufacturing, that technology know-how that we have in the country is brought into the manufacturing domain in India, and try and see the convergence of these two to happen, which will probably put us in a different spot. So that's one. The second thing that I think is very important is that for manufacturing to really get competitive from a country perspective, there are 2 or 3 things which are required to happen within our geography. For example, manufacturing of capital equipment. A manufacturer still has to rely a lot in terms of importing capital equipment from outside. And it just does not stop with the capital equipment, because then it goes beyond that. It goes to spare parts requirement, it goes to service requirement, and so on and so forth. So how do we ensure that, say, capital equipments, which is one of the foundation for manufacturing, but we don't seem to have too many capital equipment manufacturers. We have a very large textile sector in the country, but look at how many textile equipment manufacturers or textile machine manufacturers are in the country. Because whenever it comes to setting up a large textile plant, we say, okay, let's go to Germany, let's go to China, let's go to Japan and get all those equipment imported into the country. Similarly is the case with electrical and electronics. That is becoming almost like something which is getting embedded into every manufacturing unit now. But why do we have to import sensors? Why do we have to still import all the electronic components from outside? Why can't, along with capital equipments, we ensure that some of these, which are the bedrock and foundation of manufacturing, get into the country? So that's point number 2 as what I would like to see. And point number 3, what I would like to see is not just make in India. I would love to see make in rural India. So rather than just make in India, can we start to ensure that we drive some campaign on make in rural India? We have a very, very large agricultural base in the country. But in terms of food processing, and I think one of the persons did make a comment, or I think Rene, it was you who said something about food processing. But what are we doing in terms of manufacturing in rural India? Can we start to think about what are those industries that can really come up in the rural market of the country, so that this entire challenge that we have of what does the agricultural laborer do when there is no agriculture happening. You see huge amount of migration from the villages into the cities. And now when there is a pandemic, you find the reverse migration happening, which is people going back from the cities to the rural areas. Now, and it puts a huge burden on all the cities that we have in the country. So how do we focus on the third element, which is make in rural India? So those would be my 3 wish list. Sorry for taking a little additional time, but that's what I would like to.
Great. I think that sums it up really well. And we're completely out of time. So thank you all for being a part of this very interesting conversation. It's clear that we have the right ambition, but we have a lot of work to do if we want to be a force to reckon with in the manufacturing space. Again, a thank you to all the panel members, and it's over to you, Neha, for the rest of the program. Thank you all.
After that very interesting panel discussion, it is clear that India has its work cut out if it wants to be a serious manufacturing destination. However, the next set of companies